The last Montreal Expos draft pick has retired from professional sports. We'll discuss that. We're going to reveal our top 10 pitching prospects in maybe the deepest pitching prospect system that has ever existed in the history of baseball. We'll talk about the MLB top 10 lists, and we will get into more TV talk on today's episode of Locked On Guardians.
You are Locked On Guardians, your daily podcast on the Cleveland Guardians, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Locked On Guardians. I want to say that this episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/Locked On today to get started. I also want to say thank you for making Locked On Guardians your first listen today and every day, wherever it is you get podcasts. I am Jeff. We got Justin over there. This is Locked On Guardians. No cats present as of now. If you missed it, if you live under a rock, the last Montreal Expos draft pick is Tom Brady, I think a football player, right? Is that what I understand? Or was it lacrosse? Maybe it was lacrosse. He was a catcher out of high school. I thought he was a
model.
I mean, isn't he that too? And in my understanding is that probably at some point in time, he was a 18th round pick of the Montreal Expos as a catcher way back in 1995. I was 14. If you're curious, the top player drafted that year was Darren Erstad. In that 18th round, Cleveland took Keith Horn out of Arkansas, who they signed. He didn't make much of an impact. Tom Brady was actually the final pick in that round because this was based off of the 1994 season where things went sideways, and Montreal had the best record in baseball when the strike happened. So they had the final pick in the round. It was Tom Brady. What's funny is the pick before that, Steve Randolph, who went to the Yankees, the only guy from that round who was drafted and signed to make it to the big leagues, and he actually played like 100+ games, so good on Steve Randolph. Not so much Keith Horn, right-hand pitcher, Arkansas State University. Tom Brady was a Junipero Serra guy, which if you've listened to the show and heard me talk draft, like that's the number one high school baseball factory in my mind. Apparently it might have even been back then, but yeah, he was a catcher for them. And yeah, 18th round pick, did not sign. Other fun random facts. One of the lowest signing bonuses in the top 11 picks is a guy who I think should be in the Hall of Fame, and that's Todd Helton. He's one of the few guys who were in a high pick who did not get $1 million. He was in didn't have slotting, but he was the quote unquote cheap signing in that first round. The other cheap guy under $1 million in the first 10 picks was Jeff Jenkins, and they're both up there. Kerry Wood, who knows if he had been healthy. Jose Cruz had a nice peak. Matt Morris, Roy Halladay, I think is our only Hall of Famer. And with all of those guys picking towards the end of the first round, Cleveland took David Miller from Clemson, first base only. A weird pick now when you look at how the draft is done to take a first base only guy who wasn't the best. And and you had only 28 teams, so only 28 picks, but there was some draft pick compensation guys, not to Cleveland. If you're curious about Cleveland in that 1995 draft, before we move on, that I must have clicked on something and I lost it. They also took Scott Winchester from that year from Clemson. Jason Rakers is a guy who we both remembered as a prospect. Mike Glavine, a name that you might know, and best pick, Cody Ransom, one of the rare second rounders to not implode. Sean Casey was excellent for this team, and not for this team. He's an excellent player who was traded to get Dave Burba, who was excellent for a window. And I don't know. The only other funny things is I've often referenced Scott Morgan, who was a Gonzaga college guy who had a lot of home runs in the minors and never got to the big leagues. But it's probably enough on that, unless you want to do any. You know me. I could spend the next three segments just talking about drafts. So.
No, I was 6 years old, so I don't have a whole lot of that recollection from that draft. I don't want to go down that rabbit hole. Let's. So yesterday we talked about if you stuck around to the YouTube portion of the show, and if you didn't, I highly encourage you to go check it out if you're a big fan of the podcast and Guardians pitching and pitching prospects and all that kind of stuff. But we spent, I don't know, a good half hour, if not longer, talking about the rotations at AAA, AA, High A, Low A, and some pitchers to know in the Arizona Complex League next year. I mean, we literally talked about probably, let's see, maybe 6 or 7, at least 7 pitchers per level, and maybe even 8. So that's 4 levels. We probably talked about 32 pitchers yesterday in the after show, literally. So go check that out if you haven't had a chance to. But it was a fun discussion. If you listen to it, thank you. And if not, let us know if you get a chance to, because we spent a good half hour just talking about those minor league rotations. So we did promise we would give our top 10 pitching prospects today for the Guardians, because we've been kind of doing prospects as we've broken down every position in the system in terms of the prospects. We would give our top prospects, and we didn't get a chance to do that yesterday because the extra segment went pretty long and we both pretty much nerded out. So we promised to give our top 10 pitching prospects on the audio and video portion of today's show. Do you want to start from the bottom up, perhaps? That might be fun, instead of starting at number 1.
Sure. I'll say this. I had 20 starters in my top 50. And that's like, I'm not including guys like Ethan Hankins and Doug Nikhazy that I think are probably going to end up relievers who did make it. Like, basically, once you hit 40, all of those guys are, even if they're starters, I project them as relievers. So this is, I mean, it's still like nearly half their prospects for my rankings were pitching. So I just wanted to kind of outline, just put that out there into the world. I said, yeah, should we go backwards? If you've been following, I've been doing shorts with my top 30 prospects every day on our YouTube channel. So you're going to get to kind of look behind the curtain. Ryan Webb is not on this list. If you were following along, he was prospect 30 and Gabby Rodriguez was prospect 29. So make sure to check that series out. But number 10, who do you have?
At number 10, I have Jacob Zibin from last year's draft. He is my 25th overall prospect, by the way.
I have Xavion Curry, who's 21 for me. He might end up a reliever, and I think there's a pretty good chance of it. But I mean, he's also, I like safety, and he's got 2, average to above average pitches, and he's a major leaguer. So I value the safety of knowing he's a major leaguer, even though I would admit that, like, you have the ceiling guy there. Yeah,
I mean, they really overpaid for, now I shouldn't say overpaid, but they went over slot to get Zibin. Yeah, and he's another young player for the class who's got, like essentially a lot of upside.
They decided that Zibin and DeLauder was worth more than Cam Collier. Like, that was the decision to make.
Yeah, right. They passed that up. So at number 9, let's get through 5, and then we can go to the top 5 after. Number 9, I went with Jack Leftwich. I initially thought Jack Leftwich was going to be a reliever. He started last year, and he showed some good stuff. I think there's a chance for him to start now with a good mid-90s fastball. I think there might be more in the tank there. Like the slider, I like the way he thinks about pitching and just overall his approach to working. And it's going to really depend on the changeup and control for him long term.
He was my just missed. He would be 11th on mine. I have Hunter Gaddis here, who is. He's got a little more velocity. He's got a little more size, and I think his secondary pitch is the best between him and Curry. Right? It's a very similar story with those two guys. So it's safety. I think both those guys can pitch 10 years in the big leagues. Maybe it's in the bullpen, not as a starter role, but I think they do both have a chance to start. For me, number 8 is Parker Messick. Parker Messick was utterly dominant as a left-handed pitcher out of Florida State. Really good secondary offerings. I believe I'm not always the best with my tunneling stuff. I'm still kind of, learning, but I thought he tunneled some of his pitches well. That led to some confusion he just sets everything up well. He has a very cerebral mind. The secondary offerings were just unhittable. And I'm betting on a Cleveland bounce here for multiple reasons. He was not a big velocity guy. He was not an overpowering pitcher. It was all about those secondaries. You've heard us talk on the show. One of the big hits on him in the draft was he wasn't in shape. or that he wasn't in like elite athlete shape. He's not like he's not like a softball beer league pitcher here or anything. He's just there's a level of what they expect pitchers to be. And I will say we've seen through the years, some guys struggle with it. I mentioned Ethan Hankins at the top. I'm probably lower on him because a lot of my data and a lot of times where I got to get reports and video was before he got back in that like tip top shape before he got hurt. And we've, Dylan Howard's a guy I've talked about where pitching seems to be the one place where guys can sometimes get away with not being at peak, but you want to be at peak to stay healthy. You want to be at peak to get those maximum miles per hour and everything else. So he's a guy that if he gets stronger, just tightens it up a little bit. I don't want to be like a body shamer because look at me. I have nothing to talk about here. I have no room to say anything at all. But when you're talking about getting the absolute elite of the elite, it gives him more growth potential. Like getting in shape, getting a little more toned up from just the way the Guardians tune up all pitching. It's like he has two ways to improve on what is already a really good base.
Messick just missed for me. I had him and Webb and Nikhazy outside the top 10. As much as I like Nikhazy, I'll just go 8 and 7 here. I have Curry and Gaddis back to back 8 and 7. I agree with you. They both could be relievers. I think Curry doesn't have the changeup to start possibly, and maybe the size, but the two breaking pitches might give him a chance depending on how he uses them. But he's also got to command the fastball, which is the same as Hunter Gaddis. Hunter Gaddis has added velocity, but he still has to command the fastball because I think it has some ride and carry, but I think there is a little bit of a lack of deception. I'm not really sure, but anyway, he needs to command the fastball, and his breaking balls are not as great as Curry's, but he does have that plus changeup. So I have them there just because I think they're good back of the rotation starters, but also could be good relievers. I have them as just solid major league contributors. That's where I'm at on 8 and 7.
My 7 is Justin Campbell, and it's one of those things where like I really kind of want to put him higher. He was either 20th or 21st on my board. He was I think he was the top player available when they got him. Oklahoma State had 5 really interesting arms, and none of them added velocity. They got a bunch of transfers, and they didn't see any bumps. It's a good program, but for whatever reason, like Victor Medeiros and some of those guys, we didn't see the state improvement. And Justin Campbell doesn't throw very hard. Like if he doesn't see a bump in his stuff, like we've seen most Cleveland guys, then he's probably a fringy type, but he's the Cleveland mold to a T. Everything you look at with him, I'm going to not go too in depth here to save some for you to talk about because I know you're much higher on him, but I'll just say he fits their mold to a T, and he was every bit as productive as Messick with, I think, even more growth potential just because he's also so big.
Yeah. Who do you have at 6?
My number 6 prospect is, and this is hard, I like really went back and forth, but Joey Cantillo. If we had seen him for a full year, he might be my number 4. He could honestly be that high. Unfortunately, we didn't get that full year, but he had the lowest hard hit percentage of any pitcher in the upper minors before he got hurt. He was really taking a step forward. The secondary offerings were, there's the slider that always had like ridiculous spin dating back to his high school days, long and lean, all those things. It's just health.
By the way, I did bad math. If anybody knows me, math is not my strong suit, and I counted wrong. So I actually had Zibin at 11. So I had Leftwich at 10, Curry at 9, Gaddis 8. I have Cantillo at 6 for the same reasons. Everything is pointing up with him. He just needs a little bit of health.
And I think we should take a moment here and then dive back in. You'll get our top 5. You'll get the juicy names in a moment on the show. But first, let's talk about one of our fantastic friends. And today, our fantastic friend is our newest friend. And you always need some new friends in life. You always need someone who is spicing things up. And that's what FanDuel brings to this party, is some spice. This year, the only app you need for the Super Bowl is FanDuel, America's number 1 sports book. And we're really excited about our new sports betting partner for Locked On because they're the number 1 sports book in America, FanDuel. If you're new to FanDuel, that's even better. They have so many great features that make betting on sports fun and easy. Download now so you can bet Super Bowl 57 with a no-sweat first bet. You'll get up to $3,000 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. FanDuel lets you bet on everything from the money line to the point spread to who will score a touchdown. I know we talked about the Eagles, but they had some rather significant news today. that I'm not. It's like really bad. That's going to affect their offensive line. I know it was a pick 'em, but that might be enough to shift. Like they're going to have a heavy cloud on themselves heading into this Super Bowl. So I'm just going to throw that out there. It's trying to be as delicate as I can, but boy, it's hard to. So join FanDuel today at FanDuel.com/lockedon to claim your no sweat first bet on Super Bowl 57. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NFL. So just some behind, top five.
I have Campbell there. Campbell's 5 for me.
Okay. Like you go in depth on him.
Well, I mean, you covered it pretty well, but I would say for me, you had Messick kind of getting the Guardians player development bump. I would say for me, it's Campbell, and I don't think he has that far to go. I think they can help him sustain higher velocity because I remember him hearing about him at Oklahoma State, where the velocity would sometimes dip a little bit. He would be coming in at a lower range, and then sometimes it would hit 97. I could see Cleveland helping him sit 95, 96, topping 97, 98. I like the changeup. I like the curveball. He's a good athlete. I think he came into Oklahoma State as a two-way player. I think there was maybe a season he had that. So like Logan Allen had that similar bump. So I think that Campbell's an easy pick for just to find a quick second gear. And I don't think it'll be that. I think he's a top 100 prospect a year from now.
In terms of maintaining velocity, you're hoping is more Bybee, less Burns, right? If we're doing our Tanner scale.
He has a better frame than Burns. Like Burns is a little bit smaller of a pitcher.
Yes.
Campbell, I think, is 6'7". So I think that gives you a little bit more.
Which, I don't know. In the past, I've argued over 6'6" sometimes leads to more mechanical issues than they're worth. So, it's the other side of it sometimes with size. But he reminds me kind of in some ways like Sean Jelly used to be. I think he's in the Giant system with Kentucky, who was 6'11", where some guys, in spite of their height, it's like their mechanics are flawless, and he's a guy whose mechanics are pretty flawless. So he is your 5, so I have to tell my 5, right? So mine's Logan Allen. Not as high on him as Kylie McDaniel, who we'll get into that in the after show today. But, I think I mentioned it either on the after show or in the show yesterday that like there's a lot of talk about overreaction or prospect fatigue with someone like George Valera. And, I've learned kind of a lot with Bo Naylor last year where I did overreact. But in fairness, it was about as bad of a year as one can have. Logan Allen had a bad month on a transition to AAA that almost everyone except for like Andrew Misiazik struggled with that transition. It's a hitter's park, a really bad hitter's park, and a very slick baseball, and a lot of guys stumbled. And I think Logan Allen is in this rotation by the end of the year. I think he is kind of, he's likely going to be he could maybe get to that Quantrell level of being like a 3-4, but he does it as a lefty, which makes it a lot more valuable.
And he's going to miss more bats than Quantrell as well.
But I mean, just kind of like when you're looking at like pitching tiers, like is he a 1, a 2? Is he a 3? Is he more of that in between 3 and 4? Because like I look at that Quantrell and maybe Savale levels, like kind of between a 3 and a 4. It's like I think Allen's there. I don't think he's really going to necessarily be a strict 3 type, but
I could see him being a left-handed Savale, hopefully with better health. Yeah, he does such a good job with the slider and the changeup. And his fastball has what people call a flat vertical approach angle, which basically is it comes in very, very steep or I should say flat, and it makes the baseball appear like it's moving a lot less in a weird direction than it actually is. I don't know. I'm going to have an interview with somebody coming up that will explain it better than I can, but I'll let people know about that. I have Logan Allen just above Campbell at 4. I was high on him last year.
Did you leave someone off your ranks?
No, remember I was bad at math, and I started with Zibin, even though he was 11. So I have Leftwich at 10, Curry 9, Gaddis 8, Cantillo 7, Campbell 6, Logan Allen 5. Nope, I'm doing math wrong again. Hang on. This is like real life right here. Yeah. Leftwich 10, Curry 9, Gaddis 8, Cantillo 7, Campbell 6, Allen 5, 4, 3, 2. Okay, so I guess I was right the first time. Zibin was 10. Don't ever ask me to do math for you, okay? Or count. It never ends up very well for me. So I had it right the first time. Oh, you know what? I skipped over one player after Allen. So I do have one more pitcher between Allen and the big three. So behind the scenes, Jeff has gone frozen on me. So I'm just going to keep talking until Jeff comes back. But I have Cody Morris at number 4 and my 4th pitching prospect. The only reason I have Cody Morris sitting at number 4 is because of health. That's the only reason he is where he is. Cody Morris if he had been healthy in 2021 or 2022 for that matter, I don't even know if he qualifies as a prospect. He might end up being already in the rotation. Like I think Cleveland would have less issues with him if he is in the rotation, or putting him in the rotation if he's healthy. So that's the reason he's still on this list. Like the fastball, he's got to find more consistent velocity with the fastball. I think that's been an issue. I don't know if that's health, but going back to his days in at South Carolina, he's had some injury issues and ended up not being able to hold his fastball velocity there. And then in 2019, when they drafted him, when he pitched for the first time in the minor leagues, his fastball was kind of 93, 95, and he's gone through a lot of revamping in terms of his, I think, body shape and his delivery. He shortened his delivery quite a bit. Obviously, you saw the changeup last year was pretty good, and he's got a good curveball. I like the curveball. He's added a cutter that should help his fastball and slider play better together. Or I should say his fastball and curveball play better together because now he's got a little in-between pitch, which is always helpful. So Cody Morris, number 4. I forgot I skipped him. Number 3, I have Gavin Williams. Maybe a surprise to some having Williams there. There's some injury history with Gavin Williams, which is a concern. You know, there was, I think, a back issue. I'm not 100% on that. I think one of the guys who has a top 100 list, either at FanGraphs or I'm not sure what other outlet might have mentioned a back issue. He did have a blister issue in college, so that was a concern for me. So that's why I have him at number 3 instead of maybe higher like most people have him. But Jeff's back for us, which is good to see. So I'm not rambling as much, but I still like Williams' upside. He could be a number 2 and number 3 starter. We'll just see where the changeup goes, and we'll see where the command goes long term as well, and as long as he's healthy. So, Jeff, while you were gone, I was explaining that I had Cody Morris as my 4th pitcher ahead of Logan Allen. So that's where I was missing the math on.
Hey, sorry, everyone. My computer's being a real pain.
Yeah, looks like we're going to lose Jeff again there. So I have Daniel Espino at number 2. I know that's probably a little bit controversial. I'm just concerned about the health with Daniel Espino. There's been reports about 2021 where he was kind of shut down at the end of the year with instructs, didn't pitch. So that is a problem. Not sure where there's some stuff with that. And then obviously last year, he only pitched 18 innings. They were 18, 19 dominant innings last year. But if he had been healthy all year, obviously he's a top prospect, and he might even be talking about being in the majors this year had he been healthy all year last year. So that's really the only issue with him is health. Otherwise, Daniel Espino is probably the top pitching prospect in baseball if he's healthy last year, if he kept up what he was doing. So that's the only knock on him. And I just have a lot of concerns whether he's going to stay healthy long term. The knee issue turned into a shoulder issue, and it sounds like that's not the first time the knee and the shoulder have been issues for him. But, you know, all it takes is one healthy year and everyone's back in on you. I mean, Jacob deGrom is a great example. Jacob deGrom was healthy until he wasn't. So it just takes one healthy year. But the problem with pitching injuries is, you know, injuries are the best predictor of future injuries. So that means I have Tanner Bybee as my top pitching prospect, and Tanner Bybee is my top prospect in the organization. I think that there's a lot of good upside in that arm. I think that there's a good chance he winds up a number 2 or number 3 starter at the worst. I think some people said that they were about if he can sustain the velocity. I have confidence that he will. He's got 3 average pitches or better. The curveball, I think, will get better. As long as he learns to pitch off the breaking stuff. I think he's a guy who's got to maybe dial down the fastball usage. And I'm not saying he did it a lot. I'm just saying he will probably benefit from throwing the changeup. He's not afraid to throw it. Use the slider, improve the curveball, and then spot the fastball when he can, because he can be hard to get on top of. He'll need fastball location. I think that's where his issues might be. So a guy who would definitely want to be careful of sequencing. But for Bybee, I like the upside, but I also think the floor is very safe. And that's why he is my top pitching prospect. And I know Jeff, who is still struggling with technical difficulties right now, would agree. He has Bybee number 1. I know that for sure. So we agree there as usual. We're going to move on to the MLB top 10s. We plan to talk about the top 10 players on the MLB Now list. They went through and did all their rankings for all the positions in baseball. And only one real surprise was this. Starting pitching was the one they did today, and Corbin Burnes wound up at number 1, which everybody knows Corbin Burnes is obviously my favorite starting pitcher, apparently, because I won't shut up about him, but he was their top pitcher. No Shane Bieber in the top 10. Burnes, Verlander, Rodon were the top 3. Scherzer, Alcantara, Ohtani were in there. The bottom 4 of Fried, Wheeler, DeGrom, and Julio Urias from the Dodgers. I could have found a way to fit Shane Bieber in there. Like, DeGrom wasn't healthy at all last year. Bieber was, and Bieber has only had one season where he's had health issues. DeGrom's had multiple years of health issues, and everybody else, I mean, DeGrom is obviously, when healthy, a top 3 pitcher in baseball, maybe the best, but he hasn't been healthy for a little bit now. I would have probably maybe given a little bit of run to Shane Bieber. At shortstop, probably no surprise. I know some people might argue differently because they love batting average and volume hits, but there is no Ahmed Rosario in the top 10 at shortstop, and I don't think it's even a consideration. The other place where Cleveland did play somebody was second base. Andres Jimenez comes in at number 3 among second basemen. He was obviously not ranked on last year's list, so he climbed up the charts really fast. MLB Network really liked him. He comes in just behind Jeff McNeil, who just got that pretty little extension from the New York Mets. We'll talk about extensions in a little bit. I don't know if Jimenez is going to get his now, and it might be related to the TV deal. He'll certainly command more than Jeff McNeil, because I think Jimenez is going to go on to be a better player than Jeff McNeil, has a better all-around skill set, and McNeil's also older. But number 3 is a good spot to be in. I mean, that's second base is pretty empty, and if you look, there's a bunch. I think Brandon Lau might have been higher had he been healthy last year. Maybe same with Jorge Polanco. He had injury issues, but second base not great. Like Brendan Donovan's on that list. He only played for a little bit of the season last year. And then Colton Wong had some defensive issues. He got traded. Ketel Marte's bounced back and forth between second base and center field over the last couple of years. So second base is kind of a vast wasteland. So number 3, still a compliment for Andres Jimenez. 3 other places where Cleveland had players show up. No surprise. Jose Ramirez is on the top 10 for third baseman. He comes in at number 2. He ends up behind Manny Machado, who, no issues there. Manny Machado had a great year last year. He's been a good player for a long time, but I think he really, he was in the MVP race. I know he ended up losing out to Paul Goldschmidt, but he had a very fantastic year last year. I have no issues with that. I'm really glad he didn't finish behind Austin Riley, because there are some people online who will argue that Austin Riley is better than Jose Ramirez, and there are people out there who argue Rafael Devers is better than Jose Ramirez, and I think voting will show you that people will make that argument. But for me, I have no issue with Machado number 1 and Jose Ramirez number 2. Nolan Arenado at 5 behind Rafael Devers kind of surprised me, to be honest. Bregman, who was not very good last year, still made the list. Max Muncy, who had a terrible year last year, made the list. Yandy Diaz, old buddy, makes the list at number 9, even though he's more of a first baseman, not great at third base. That kind of tells you how empty the list is. And DJ LeMahieu had injury issues last year, ended up at number 10. So also kind of a light list. No Josh Bell or Josh Naylor in first base for top 10. Hopefully one of them makes it next year, but that's a tough list to crack. I mean, you've got Goldschmidt, Freeman, Vlad Guerrero, Jose Abreu, Pete Alonso, Matt Olson, Ty France, who had a breakout year. Nathan Lowe had a great breakout year. Luis Ariz and Rhys Hoskins. Ariz is not a power hitter. He's not a traditional first baseman. Rhys Hoskins didn't have his fantastic year, but it's a light list. Center field, obviously Miles Straw did not make that list. Not a hard list to crack either, though. The bottom 2 are Mike Yastrzemski and Chas McCormick. the rest of the list is pretty darn good. But check that out. Right field, nobody in right field. No Oscar Gonzalez, no anybody else. Maybe one day George Valera or somebody cracks that list in right field. Maybe Chase DeLauder one day. But that's a tough list to crack too. The last two positions where Cleveland did have a player, left field, Stephen Kwan, third place in Rookie of the Year voting, ends up number 6, comes in behind Randy Arozarena at 5, Taylor Ward at 4, Kyle Schwarber at 3, who really only played the outfield most of the year last year because Bryce Harper had Tommy John and couldn't throw. So, not Tommy John, but he had a ligament issue in his elbow. Now he's had Tommy John. So, Kyle Schwarber ends up playing more outfield than he probably would have. Juan Soto, number 2, Yordan Alvarez, number 1, who also is more of a DH, but I don't think they're really making this list based on defense. This is all offense because Michael Brantley's there. He's not been a great defender. Eloy Jimenez was number 10. He's not a great defender. This is a strong list, though. So for Stephen Kwan to be number 6 here, just above Tyler O'Neill, Michael Brantley. And hey, look at that. Stephen Kwan above Michael Brantley. How impressive is that? That's good to see. Hopefully he keeps it up next year and it adds on. And then, of course, relief pitching is the last place they ranked. Manuel Clase also shows up at number 2. Edwin Diaz, I think, finishes number 1 ahead of him just on strikeouts. They both have good command. They both have nasty stuff. Edwin Diaz just misses more bats. So I think that's fair. Emmanuel Clase, the only days where he does not pitch well is days where he might give up a little bit of a hard hit here or there, but he ends up, getting kind of BABIP to death. Sometimes he gives up balls in play that end up squeaking through. It shouldn't be hit sometimes, and it causes him to blow saves in games because sometimes he will rely on some batted ball luck just because he misses less bats. But, he does get ground balls, and sometimes those ground balls find eyes, and we'll see what happens this year without the shift, how that ends up affecting him. But this stuff is still nasty. Comes in at number 2. No other Guardians on there, but it's a tough list. There's a lot of good relievers in baseball. I mean, Ryan Helsley had a great year for the Cardinals last year. He's number 10. Liam Hendricks was fantastic last year, except when he faced Josh Naylor. Also, battling cancer now, so best to him. Ryan Presley has been one of the game's best for a while. He's on there. Andres Munoz had a great year last year. Jason Adam, who I think he was the one in the playoff game against Cleveland who couldn't feel his hand, or was that Pete Fairbanks? Either way, both those guys struggled against Cleveland late in the year. I think they had health issues, but he's on the list, and he just got an extension, I believe. Or no, it was Pete Fairbanks, actually. Yohan Duran, who throws 100 miles an hour, he's on the list. Evan Phillips, who was like a DFA merry-go-round a couple of years ago, he ends up being the Dodgers' best reliever. The Dodgers' bullpen is a little bit shaky right now, but Evan Phillips is on there. Devin Williams, number 3 on that list. I love Devin Williams, great player. So overall, Cleveland has the number 2 reliever on the list, the number 6 left fielder, the number 2 third baseman, and the number 3 second baseman. So that's a pretty good list right there. It tells you they've got a bunch of positions in the top 10. I don't know if they'll add anybody next year in the top 10. I mean, it'd be great if Naylor or Bell could crack the list. I don't think they will. Maybe somebody in right field can emerge. Shane Bieber can get back on the top 10. That'd be good. I don't know if they'll add a second reliever in the top 10. It's a hard list to crack, but they do have a good bullpen. If Espino becomes a reliever, maybe that's how he does it. I don't know. Certainly probably won't be a shortstop, so we'll see. Maybe it'll be a catcher. I mean, catcher could be an area where they end up with a top 10 guy if it's Bo Naylor one day. Probably not Mike Zunino, but catcher's also a light list. So if Mike Zunino has a year where he did a couple of years ago with the 30-plus homers, he could end up on that list. So you never know. The last thing I want to talk about today before we move on to the YouTube-only portion of the show, which unfortunately is looking like it's just going to be me solo today. The last thing we want to take a look at here real quick is the TV rights deal on impacts on extension. I'll just hit this real quick before we wrap that up. There's been a lot of good articles out there. Ben Clemens at Fangraphs wrote a good article on this the other day, and over at Baseball Prospectus, I want to make sure I get the author's name right. It is Rob Maines, who did a good job on this as well. Really broke it down, on the history of the deal, how bankruptcy works, chapter 11, all that, all the technical stuff that I don't know. I was having a hard time counting my prospect list before, so don't ask me to do math. But here is what it really breaks down to. And I would trust these people more than I would trust anybody because these are the guys who can break this stuff down. So in 2023, if whoever TV provider you have has Ballys, you're probably going to see the games as normal. I don't think they're going to be impacted. Doesn't sound like. The real issue is what's going to happen is these teams are going to be paid less. Cleveland's TV deal was already pretty bad for the current market. It might have been good when they signed it back when they did sign it, when they sold the upfront fee to Fox and they sold STO. But fans are unlikely to be affected this year in terms of how they're going to watch games, it sounds like. But what it really comes down to is teams are either going to get less money or they're going to get a different contract, or they might get their fees delayed. So even if they do get paid, the money could be delayed in how they get it. Someone's going to pay them. It just depends on, if the court decides that when they go to court for bankruptcy and all this other stuff to renegotiate, depends on what they decide. Maybe an arbitrator decides how much these TV right deals end up being worth, how much cash these creditors have on hand or these investors have on hand to pay them. So Cleveland either gets less money or whatever money they get ends up being delayed. It could be both, it says. So I was thinking the other day, like, the Rays hammered out some extensions with Yandy Diaz, with Jeffrey Springs, with Pete Fairbanks. The Mariners just gave Dylan Moore a nice little extension. Jeff McNeil just got an extension from the Mets. So it's extension season. And I tweeted the other day that the guys that make the most sense are Tristan McKenzie and Andre Jimenez, but both guys got pretty sizable signing bonuses, both out of the draft and the international for both of them. And they both ended up making money last year off of MLB's pre-arbitration bonus pools. McKenzie over $1 million. I'm sorry, Andre Jimenez over $1 million, and McKenzie, I think, around $500,000 for their performances based on WAR. So they got a little more cash last year, which is good for them because of their performance. And Cleveland didn't have to pay it, I don't believe. I mean, they might have paid a portion because everybody puts the money in the pool. But I thought that might affect their extensions. But the other thing is, I'm kind of wondering now if this TV rights deal is going to pause them. Jose Ramirez, I think this works out in the team's favor, is making the least amount of money he's going to make in this extension he just signed. This is the lowest he's going to be paid. He makes $14 million. He'll make $17 million in 2024. He'll make $19 million in 2025, and then it'll go up from there. So this would have been a great offseason for Cleveland to add payroll around him because he's making the lowest he's going to make throughout this deal. But I think the TV rights extension or the TV rights issue is going to cause them to pause on extensions. So I would at least be keeping an ear out for that and thinking that, this could impact how they decide to approach extensions. Maybe long-term, they're like, okay, but we'll figure this out. We may not have a lot of certainty, but it'll work itself out in the future, especially if they find the right deal. They won't worry. Games are going to be on TV. I have no idea where games are going to be in the future. It'll be Ballys this year, it sounds like, or maybe they rebrand. Who knows? But games should still be on any networks that have at Ballys for you. Or if you're out of market watching MLB TV, you don't have to worry about that either. So speaking of MLB TV, YouTube TV drops MLB TV. Boo on them. I might have to drop YouTube TV, but we'll see if they work out a new deal. Nobody works harder to not put their game in front of fans than Major League Baseball. But I think in the long term, this TV issue might be good for fans. It might be bad for how their teams spend money on players because they're going to cry about not having TV revenue. And I will say, TV revenue is what's been carrying a lot of money for a lot of teams. A lot of teams rely on TV revenue more than ticket sales in the last several years because TV rights have exploded. Well, guess what? That bubble's popped. So teams are going to be impacted by that, and they're going to say they're impacted by that. So it could hurt fans in terms of how teams decide to spend on their players. In the long term, though, for consumers, I think it might give them a better chance to see the games, whether that's on a streaming service or however, get rid of local blackout issues. Maybe that kind of works itself out this way. It sounds like they want to end blackouts. It just was always the local TV rights is the reason they couldn't do it. So this might help in the long term. So we'll see. But keep thinking about those things, extensions, all that kind of stuff. TV, we'll keep bringing news to you on that. For Jeff, I am Justin. Thanks for tuning into the audio portion. I'll run through some ESPN Top 100 prospects on YouTube only. Won't be too long, but thanks for listening. Make sure you download every day. We appreciate if you do, if you're listening, wherever you listen. If you're able to leave a review, we'd really appreciate it. Share with your friends. Check us out on YouTube as well if you're not subscribed there. Really appreciate everybody tuning in. This is our last show of the week. Again, we'll be back with more regular shows starting on the 13th. We'll be back to 4 and 5 days a week there. So next week will be our last 3-day show week. So we'll be back with more regular content as Truck Day comes along and teams start reporting to spring training on the 13th. Guardians Truck Day is Friday. So get excited. We're almost through the worst of it. So thanks for tuning in and on the audio portion. And we'll have a little bit extra on YouTube if you want to head over there and go Guardians, go. All right, so ESPN was the last, I shouldn't say last top 100, but the latest top 100 prospect rankings to come out. Let's see, Fangraphs has had theirs, Pipeline's had theirs, Baseball America's had theirs, Baseball Prospectus has theirs. I will say I'm a little bit biased, and I'm waiting for Prospects Live to do theirs. I'm not doing a top 100 for Prospects Live, but I will be at least making some suggestions for Guardians players. But I am a little biased because I also write there, so I'm waiting for them. That's the last of the big ones for me. But let's go over real quickly while we have some time in the after show to talk about the Cleveland prospects that made the list. Daniel Espino comes in at 18. He is the top prospect in the Guardians organization for Kylie McDaniel of ESPN, formerly of Fangraphs. He's also worked for the Yankees. He's also worked for the Braves. I really like Kylie quite a bit. He also used to be a scout with Jeff. So he's 18 for him. A lot of good grades on the fastball, obviously, everything else. No surprise, he is the top prospect there. Gavin Williams comes in at number 33 for Kylie. Not really a surprise there. I mean, you could really make an argument for any of these three pitching prospects to be the top prospect in the organization. I think that's why we keep referring to them as the big three. His comment for Williams, it's interesting. He says, plus fastball and breaking ball that you see in the late innings, but enough feel to be a starter. So talking about a guy who has 2+ pitches and typically a guy who has, wipeout extra late inning bullpen stuff and could do it as a starter. We'll see if he continues his changeup development, like I said before, and just has to continue to refine his command. We'll see when he's ready. The next one I thought was a little bit surprising on his ranking was Logan Allen at 53. So Logan Allen is Kylie and ESPN's third-ranked Guardians prospect. This is probably the only place where I've seen that. His comment for Logan Allen is lefty with above-average stuff and plus command. Very surprised by that. Logan Allen, to me, is a good prospect. Like I said, I think the changeup and the slider both play well off each other because he has like kind of a split change. And I think batters have a hard time determining the difference between his split changeup and slider at times. And the fastball is just really deceptive thanks to the way he releases it. Basically how low to the ground it comes out of his hand. He says he's a safe bet for bulk innings as a third or fourth starter. I think that's true, but I would say Tanner Bybee is a safer bet for bulk innings. We'll talk about his comments on that here in a second, though. But that's a surprising one. Logan Allen being his third-ranked Guardians prospect overall, 53 on the top 100. And his next Guardians prospect, 64, is Brian Rocchio. So I'm sorry, Keith Law is top 100 too. I don't want to forget that. Keith Law at top 100. So his was also very different as it tends to be. Comment for Brian Rocchio, plus hitter and steady defender with below average power. I think Rocchio probably grows into fringe average power. I don't want to say below average. Below average power is like Stephen Kwan. Fringe average is more like, Andres Jimenez, who hit 17 home runs last year. I think Rocchio can hit 17 home runs. I think Kwan's more of a 10 to 12 guy. Rocchio or Jimenez is like a 17 to 20, and I can see that for Rocchio. Steady defender, 64. No issues there, and I think there's some upside there. But as I stated before, there's some risk. He has George Valera at 86. His comment was power and patience outfield with some defensive value. I think we're going to see some questions on the defensive value and health, especially now that he's had hamate surgery once again. And we've talked about it. We have some concerns about the ability to make contact, but I think maybe some of that's overstated. I think he's going to make enough contact where when he does make contact, it's going to be damage. So, even if he's hitting like 250 or 240, he's still going to draw enough walks and he's still going to hit 25 home runs, depending on how he handles left-handers. That'll be the biggest thing. But Major League pitching is really good at exploiting weaknesses. If he has a weakness, they're going to find it and he'll have to adjust. But everybody still overall has him as a top 100 prospect. So that's good to see. Bo Naylor at 91. Nice to see Bo Naylor bounce back. I said everybody should have given him a mulligan, and I'm not saying he didn't have to make changes to his game in order to remain viable as a top 100 prospect and a Major League starter at the position. He did have to go and make changes to his approach and his swing because he did have issues in 2021. But I continue to give Naylor the benefit of the doubt because of the bloodlines and because of the work ethic and the overall talent level and athleticism. And he is a year later back in top 100s across the board. Power and patience package at the plate, probably a catcher. I don't think the Guardians moving him off a catcher. I think the Guardians, considering they were very unwilling to meet the A's price on Sean Murphy, I think it's very likely that Bo Naylor stays at catcher. They'll even put up with maybe fringier defense for him, especially if they get the automated strike zone. I think as long as he can work with his pitchers to call a good game and he can throw runners out at a league average rate, maybe better, and he certainly has the arm to do so, I think he'll stay a catcher. That's going to be no problem. So Tanner Bybee is his last prospect for the Guardians. So that's 7 overall once again. He's at 93 overall at top 100. Another out of nowhere college pitcher for Cleveland, says Kylie McDaniel of ESPN. The comment that I was most surprised by, to be honest, was there is the main risk for him is some anxiety about whether or not he can maintain the dramatic velocity spike that saw him go from 89-92 to 94-97 to hitting 99. He held his velocity all year. There was never a point last year for Tanner Bybee where like there were games where he was reverting back to 90-93. Like he was consistently last year 93, 96, 97, 99 at the best of times. So 93, 96 is about where he sat for me mostly. Definitely hit 97 quite a bit. Had he had starts last year where some of that waned and he saw more of the college velocity start to creep back in, I would say, yes, there's some concern whether or not he can do it. But look, Bybee has a great frame that he grew into. He worked on his body composition. He has gotten stronger and more explosive. He has worked on the right things. And in the past, he's even talked about it, that he talked about it with us on the podcast that you can go back and listen to, that he went to Driveline to work on velocity training and didn't really sustain it. Cleveland worked with him on a program to help him sustain it, and he did all of last year. So I think this is sustainable. I have no worries. I was a big Logan Allen guy last season. I mean, when I was doing my awards for Guardians Baseball Insider at the time, I made Allen the pitching prospect of the year and the prospect of the year over Daniel Espino because he was just so incredible from end to end and how fast he was moving. And I think Bybee's even better than that. It's not a knock on Allen. I think Allen has a little bit lower of a ceiling because of the velocity. To me, Bybee could be a number 2 starter. I think it just depends on his sequencing and just refinement overall of his curveball and staying away from being too fastball reliant, which again, he really wasn't last year. It's just, he's going to need to be more cognizant of that in the major league. So thought that was a strange comment, but overall a really good list. And as a bonus, he's got other guys in the top, in the 50 future value, which is, a league average starter, 50 average value. He has Tyler Freeman, even though Tyler Freeman has exhausted his rookie eligibility. He has Tyler Freeman on the list at second base, and he also has Angel Martinez at shortstop on the 50 future value list, which is about an average starter. That is the first place I've really seen anywhere top 100 wise that has given any love to Angel Martinez. So great to see there. I agree with that a lot. Like I said, I think Martinez and Rocchio are super close in value. I think Rocchio might be the better defender. I do think he's a better defender, although there are some people who think he has issues. But I think Martinez is a very steady defender at shortstop. I don't know if I'd say great. He could be. I think he's at the very least steady. Would he be better at second base? Yes, he would. He would be better at second base, but you could say that about all shortstops. But given that I think there's a chance he may not be a good long-term shortstop, he's definitely more in the second base category. The bat, I still really like the bat a lot. I like the approach. So that's why I think he deserves a lot more love than he's getting on top 100s. Nobody's really mentioned him. So if you're an ESPN subscriber, which I'm sure a lot aren't these days, unfortunately, I honestly, for ESPN, I still subscribe because of Kylie McDaniel. I like to watch stuff on ESPN Plus, Akron Zips basketball, and I'll be watching a lot of baseball, college baseball on there coming up soon. That's really the only reason I have it still. Used to be Keith Law and Buster Olney, but those guys have either left or have since, taken their work in different directions. But Kylie McDaniel does make it worth it, unless the price keeps going up. We'll see. Let me know if you're a YouTube TV subscriber, by the way, and you lost MLB Network. Let us know in the comments or find me on Twitter if you have subscribed to YouTube TV and you are dropping it or you did drop it and what you have used, especially if you're in Northeast Ohio, because I don't love that MLB Network is no longer part of YouTube TV. I'm going to switch if they don't work out a deal. I'll give them some time to work out a deal, but that MLB Network, I have no reason. This is what I watch on TV. I watch college football, Ohio State, obviously, if you're watching this on YouTube. I watch MLB Network, and that's about it. I'll find other live sports, but I don't watch a lot of TV for current TV shows. Everything else is stream-wise. So MLB Network and live sports are the only things keeping me tied to any sort of live streaming TV that's not part of a Netflix or a Hulu or whatever. So let me know what you're using to watch live sports these days, especially when it comes to MLB Network, because I might have to switch if they don't work out a deal. Because YouTube TV didn't drop my price either. So let me know about that either on Twitter or YouTube. That'll be all for this week. Again, thanks for listening. Share with a friend if you can. Really appreciate everybody tuning in. Give us a thumbs up on YouTube. Comments always help. As I said before, we signed off the audio portion. Download, subscribe, rate, review, all that good stuff. Tell a friend, tell us, a lot of constructive feedback too. I know a lot of you have commented on sometimes we talk over each other or other issues you've heard come up too. Definitely appreciate people listening closely enough to tell those sort of things and give us the feedback. We always work on those things, and we appreciate our diehard community, which is why we do this YouTube extra version of the show. So unfortunately, Jeff, in the back half of the show had some technical difficulties, but hopefully you didn't mind me rambling too long here at the end. Hopefully we covered a lot of good stuff. We'll be back next week. Oh, one thing I want to mention before we get out of here. I should have mentioned this in the audio portion. If you can, former Indians reliever Jim Poole. The Guardians sent this out a couple weeks ago. I should notice this. February 24th, the Jim Poole golf tournament in Arizona is on February 24th out there. Jim Poole dealing with ALS. Unfortunately, he cannot make it. He cannot make it to the golf tournament, but anything you guys can do to promote that. The golf tournament is February 24th. It is at Superstition Springs Golf Course in Mesa, Arizona. It's $250 per golfer, $1,000 per foursome, and $125 for just the dinner. Goes to a good cause and goes to support a former Cleveland Indian battling Jim Poole. So make sure you take a look at that. And
I made it back for the end.
Yeah, I was just about to sign off, so you missed everything at this point. Yeah, so if you want to do Go Guardians Go, that's all I have time left for. Yeah, I've covered everything else.
No, I'll do my top. You'll get to see my top 4 through my slowly released rankings. But go Guardians Go.